Debt review was implemented by the government in 2007. What they found was that companies were writing off too much bad debt and companies were not gaining anything out of the deal. So they implemented this program of debt review where you now have the creditor going into a program with the consumer and they now can sort of pay their debt a bit less or over a longer period. But at least the creditor is getting payback. So now we're not writing off anymore, the creditor is now getting money back. And that is why the government implemented debt review. When we say a client is over-indebted, there's certain reasons why that has happened. First of all, the biggest problem probably is job loss. People lose their work and they run into debt and they cannot cope. The second thing is our interest rate. Interest doesn't really drop to zero. It goes up or it fluctuates. So the client goes into more debt. Increase in household expenses. That is another reason why people become over-indebted. Overspending, reckless lending. So the list goes on and on and on. Those are reasons why people become over-indebted. Now, the client has now approached you and now you decide, okay, this client needs to go on the review. Very important things you need to look at. The client first of all has assets. And by assets I mean there's a house, there's a vehicle, there's furniture. Things that you'd want to protect. Debt review must not be a burden to any client. Also, it must not place a burden on any family. So you take the assets and we rather protect them. Because debt review is a formally structured payoff or rehabilitation of the debt, it goes to court. It is ITC listed. So all those things protect your consumer. The consumer is not going to end up with a situation where his house is going to go on auction. The car is going to be repossessed. You rather sign the client on the review. The client comes to you. We have a well-trained or facilitator called the DC in our company. The debt counselor is governed by the NCR, which is the National Credit Regulator. In other words, the debt counselor has to follow the rules and guidelines as set out by the National Credit Regulator. Hence, you can tell your client exactly the process, okay? There's no loopholes, there's no things to hide behind. You can say it as is. We are governed by a certain process. We have to follow that process, okay? So the client tells you his whole situation, he's got assets, etc., and you decide to sign the client. The debt counselor takes that debt and she looks at the best possible way and means of the client paying it off, and we work out a suitable fee structure for the client to pay back that debt, okay? Most importantly on the review, he's going to be paying less. So where they were paying on their vehicle, for example, 1,000 Rand a month, they're going to now be paying 70% of that installment, which comes to 700. They're making a saving of 300 Rand. The same with the bond. The banks require that you pay 80% of the installment. Again, if you take 1,000 Rand, they're going to pay 800 Rand. So there's a 200 Rand saving. It's money the consumer never had. Your client has never had that. And that is what's key. When you tell people you're putting money back in their pockets, you immediately grab their attention. They can start living again, not just existing. Okay? So now you're giving back something they never ever had. Alright? Your DC, everything we do from the time that application comes in, you gotta make sure that everything on that application is completed in full. It might seem like useless information to you, but remember, because debt review goes to court, everything on that document is valid. Your client signs it. So when we present it in court, it's a legalized document. Okay, so you've got to complete that application form in full. The NCR dictates the way the payment structure is set out, so we cannot mislead our clients. Really, there's ways and means of doing everything, and it's set out by the National Credit Regulator. Okay. When all of that process is done, and we've worked out with the client. Your client's going to be happy with the amount he settles. That's 70 for a vehicle and 80 for a bond. Those are things that it's agreed between the client and the DC. So all of that gets discussed. Client is signed. Information goes to the creditors immediately by way of a 17-1 notice. The creditors get informed. Okay, so now Joy's decided she's going on debt review. We've issued a 17-1 notice, which is the first letter to a creditor saying the client is on debt review. That is immediate protection. That tells all the other creditors, listen, this client is now on the review. Our payment starts from the 3rd month. So the first month that client pays goes towards the admin fee. The second payment goes towards the attorney because it's a court process. We appoint an attorney that takes the matter to court. So the second payment goes to the attorney. The third payment goes into distribution. In other words, we have a government PDA, Payment Distribution Agency, that sees to all our payments. The client makes the payment into the PDA and that payment goes into distribution. In other words, every creditor gets paid from the 3rd month. Every creditor also knows that when the client's on the review, they accept their money from the 3rd month. Alright. The next thing the debt counselor does is that they draft a proposal. We are now at the 3rd month stage where the client starts to get the matter into court. The debt counselor then drafts a proposal, a document which he sends to court to be served and filed, and to all the creditors, telling them that all the creditors agree on the amounts that they receive. So it gets filed in court. Once that process is done, the magistrate then makes a ruling and says, Joy, you're now officially on debt review. We agree with the interest. All the creditors don't have a problem and your court order is granted. When that court order is granted, it automatically protects your client. You are protected against garnishes. You are protected against any sales of the houses or repossession of vehicles or furniture. Nobody can hold anything against you so long as your creditor's on that court order. Okay. Benefits of debt review. Just to highlight why you would want to tell a client to go on debt review. First of all, most importantly, there's going to be a reduced installment. That installment is going to be much less than what that person was paying to the creditor. That is important. Second thing, credit providers cannot do any legal action against the client. Okay, so immediately protected legally. Very, very important. Thirdly, the consumer cannot make more debt. Why? Because they are ITC listed. That's important. That is a plus. That tells other creditors, listen, we want to sort our lives, we're not making more debt, we cannot. Okay, so that is important. They now also have more money for household expenses, something they never had before. The saving that they're making by paying that reduced amount, they now have extra money in their pockets. Okay. When it comes to interest and stuff like that, you're probably going to get a client that's going to ask you, when we get to proposal stage, we actually negotiate that interest with the creditor. So probably when they're requesting 20% in their certificate of balance, we propose that we drop it to 8, 9, 10%. Again, it's a negotiating process that happens between our DC and the creditor. The client just gets to see it in the final order. If we must look at disadvantages of debt review, they're not many, but the one thing people always bring up, and that is that they are flagged at ITC. People don't like to be flagged at ITC. I see it as a plus because you want to send out the message that you no longer want to make debt. So I turn that negative into a positive. But yes, it is a negative. You are listed at ITC. The other negative thing you will hear consumers say is that debt review is for a longer period. It's for 60 months, 5 years. Yes, again I'm going to say that's fine. Maybe for some people that's a bad thing. But it's a good thing on the other hand, because you're not going to make more debt. You're not going to get rid of, and you're paying a lesser amount, so you're going to be saving more. Again, some people view it as a negative, and I suppose it's a matter of opinion. Okay? If you're wanting to know who can apply for debt review, who should we look at, Joy? People who can apply is any South African citizen. Okay? I have had the question in the past, Joy, can a foreigner apply? Unfortunately not. It's linked to the South African ID. So we have a problem with that when it comes to putting people on debt review. Everything is linked by your ID these days. So foreigners I have a bit of a problem with, we can't. Very important also, the consumer must be employed. There must be financial income. There must be some form of financial, whether the person is working as a vendor, a street vendor, that's fine, they're working. Just get an affidavit done to say, look, this is my income, that is my expense. There must be a bank account there. Okay? Again, it's a form of education. You let people know we help, we assist people. That's what we do. Okay? When you're signing a client, the things that you're going to need, basic things when you're signing a client is you need proof of employment, so you need a payslip. You need the statements with all the accounts, because normally all the account numbers are on there. ID document for both husband and wife if they are both joint entering, and marriage certificate. That marriage certificate says whether they married ANC or COP. That is important because when you find a couple is married via Muslim rights or tribal rights, then they can do a single application, okay, husband or wife. But when you come to COP, community of property, they both have to enter, meaning husband and wife do a joint application. Okay, that is it.